Presenting Channeling Erik's Hour of Enlightenment.
Exactly, guys. The Hour of Enlightenment. Thank you guys for joining our show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As many of you already know, Erik Metus is my 21-year-old son who died a few years ago, but he's here now to help from the other side so that we can all learn to get over this sometimes grueling human experience. First of all, I would like to introduce his translator, Kim Babcock. Hey, Kim, what's up, girl?
Hello. Thank you. All is good. Erik is fired up and ready to kind of help you guys learn something new. That's what we're here for. That's what we do. We try to help you guys and give him a voice so that he can give you guys new perspective and apply that perspective in your own life to improve your life. So put your ears on and get ready.
And also get a pen and piece of paper out, because at the end of the show, she is going to give her information in case you guys want a session from her, or she's got other services too. She could talk to you about the upcoming 8-city tour that she's got going on. But first, hi, Erik, my sweetie pie.
He says, hi, Mom. He's like pinching your cheeks and trying to kiss you on the forehead. He says, how you doing? Almost like he's mocking that motherly tone.
Oh my God! I know. I've always been sappy. He always makes fun of it. But I asked him in our last session to sit on my lap. You know, afterwards, and I felt such intense tingling in my legs, so intense. And my granddaughter, who is very gifted, she sees and talks to Erik, said, "Oh, Erik is hiding behind your legs." She saw him, so that was kind of cool.
That's
but anyway,
really
so
cool.
Erik, you want the topic, from what I understand, you want the topic for this week's show to be about how to not become your circumstances. You are not your experiences. You are awareness. I'm not sure about that last sentence, but that's what I got. So go for it. Take the floor, buddy.
Yeah, he goes, let's do this thing. He's shaking his hips. And he has his left hand out flat with his palm up, and then his right hand, he's kind of like striking his left hand like, you know, if you were to imitate like chopping something. So that's what he's doing with his hands. And he says, I am here to tell you about deliverance. He says, I want to help you guys. He says, I want to help you guys understand how to deliver yourself from a situation, from an emotion, from a person, maybe, he says, but and help you realize and understand that you are not that which you experience. It's just an experience. He says, but oftentimes people get it backwards. People get it misconstrued. So even though you've heard me talk so much, Mom, about how your thoughts, how you create your experience, it doesn't mean that you are your experience. That can never be. That's not possible. Because he says, because then your consciousness dissolves and the awareness isn't there, and that can't be. So
it doesn't sound fun at all. Well,
no,
can you give us an example? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, he's starting to explain. He says if you're in that if you're in that place, everything is an illusion. You're not actually seeing truth and experiencing truth. So, for example, let's say you've just lost your job and your marriage is failing, and so then you're beginning to convince yourself, and he's like pounding on his own temple, like people convince themselves and they think, I'm a failure, everything that I'm going through is failing, I'm experiencing so much failure, so I must be a failure. And that's not true. He says you have to be able to identify, first of all, see what you're going through and look at it with an objective eye, meaning even though it might be shitty and it might, I'm not repeating that, it might suck to be in that situation.
What did he say? It's okay. What did he say?
Okay, are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. Come on, it's Erik.
Okay, yep, he said, And see, it's funny because, like, this is something I would totally throw around, but, like, for all you listeners, I'm not sure how you're going to feel about this, but he says, I know that sometimes it totally sucks balls to be in a certain situation.
Yeah, he says that all the time. Awesome.
Yeah, but he says you got to be able
to. That hard, Kim?
No, I'm just like, oh my God. The image is what is cracking me up. I'm listen,
God,
Erik,
no.
sometimes you can just give me words. It doesn't always have to be an image too.
Oh, geez. That's awesome.
But anyway, he's saying you have to be able to keep, even though it might be the most difficult, darkest thing you've ever gone through, really strive to keep an objective view of what you're going through. So, because if you continue to, he says, by focusing on what you're going through or even the emotions attached to it, you continue to give life to it in your existence. Therefore, it can feel like it consumes you, and then that's when you convince yourself that you are it, whatever it may be, like a failure or a victim. So he says you have to be willing, you have to grab some balls and be willing, he says, to actually deliver yourself from that. But you have to consciously make that choice. Oftentimes, ego gets in the way, and first of all, we can't see that. We can't see the difference, he says. So, and that's because ego says, this is happening to me, look what I'm going through. But you have to be willing. He says that's the biggest part, is even people that carry that awareness, Mom, that mindfulness, sometimes aren't willing to say, I'm going to let go, I'm going to choose to not give life to that anymore, and then not let it become me, and then not believe the thought that it is who I am. He says,
that's tough.
It is, and he's showing me an image of like a young female going through her life and being abandoned by her parents, being homeless, not having a job, not able to keep a job or find any sense of like validation in who she is. So it's like she's convinced that what she is abandoned, that she's a failure, that she is invalid. And although these are the circumstances you may go through, and these are the emotions that may be born from those circumstances, it is not you, and you can't let that affect you. So even you, Mom, when you went through my physical death, and the way that it affected you emotionally and mentally and physically, he says,
oh yeah,
he says you were able to, after some time, he says, pull yourself, in your thoughts, pull yourself through and understand that collecting your awareness and making it, you had to make it a point, Mom, he said, to consciously take a step forward in life. So it's, he says, looking back, you know that you're not your circumstances. You're not a failure. Oh, he just tapped on his heart, on his chest, and he said, you're not a failure in me, Mom, and I'm not a failure in you. And it's the moment that you can differentiate between seeing the circumstance for what it is, seeing yourself for what you are, and knowing the difference. Even though you might become...
because you know, a lot of times somebody like me would say, what did I do wrong? I, could have saved him and so on. So that would have put me as defining myself by my circumstance, the tragedy. But I didn't do that much of that because I worked so hard all my life to try to help Erik find happiness and to give him love. So that wasn't an issue for me. It was just a matter of stepping forward and trying to heal through helping others.
Yeah, and he says that's exactly it, Mom. But the hardest thing I'm about to tell you, that a lot of people don't like to hear, but he says, trust me, when you hear truth, it'll resonate with you. It might ruffle your feathers, but at least let it resonate. He says, let's say, for example, we have a case where the husband cheated on the wife. The husband leaves the wife, and the wife says, what did I do wrong? How was I not enough? He says, unfortunately, what I'm here to tell you is going through the circumstances, asking yourself that is, he says, it's all reflective in ego, and then that's where you completely become disillusioned and have a skewed version of reality. And
exactly.
He says reality is that you are not the circumstances. The essence of you is much greater than that, but you have to allow that to be at the forefront. Oftentimes we don't because of ego. And sometimes it's we are not even aware. It's a subconscious choice or act. So he says, for all of the listeners, I encourage you to at least look at your problems, and he's doing like air quotes, and he says, detach from them, remove the I and the me, and look at them for what, he says, observe yourself in it, learn from yourself in that. How is that polishing you and shaping you, but still not losing that very fundamental, basic foundation of you through that process. Like, don't let yourself become enveloped in that and even identify yourself with your circumstances. Like, oh, I'm the poor wife. Oh, man, that's a shitty example. I'm not saying that, Erik.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that one's not going on the air because that's just, it gets me in the heart. I'm not sharing that one. But
come up with something else, Erik.
Yeah, it's the victim role, like, is what he's referring to, but I'm not going to use a specific way. But so it's not to say, oh, poor me, this is what I'm going through, and this is why it's poor me. He says you have to be able to separate from that. That is ego. And two, he says, as long as you can at least be strong enough to be honest with yourself, he says, you've already got half the battle behind you. But a lot of people don't even want to face their own ego. They just let it exist in front of them. And it's kind of like, it's actually a mask, he says. It's like hiding behind that mask of the ego. And when we lift that mask up, it's like, oh, crap, our true self is revealed. And this is a little foreign to me. This is a little like new territory because there isn't control here. And we're so used to that because that's ego. That's kind of like, and he's showing it acting like, almost like an autopilot thing. Like, when we're in autopilot, we're in ego. He keeps like showing, like, flip the switch. Like, oftentimes we just autopilot anymore is us acting in ego. So it takes effort, he says. It takes mindfulness and consciousness.
It takes mindfulness to be constantly aware that, okay, I am not my husband's unfaithfulness. I am not my husband's unfaithfulness. I'm not my son's death. I'm not my son's death. So you know that whole, you got to separate yourself from that. So that makes sense, but it certainly takes discipline and awareness.
Yep. Yeah, exactly, and strength. And where he is placing that strength is being strong enough to be emotionally honest with yourself, because it's not that it takes a lot of energy or effort and is going to make you feel tired, but it's just a matter of facing it and accepting it. He says, but the true core of who you are, like the fundamental basics of your being in God, that's the common thread among us all. He says that can never be spoken for outside of God or in any other way. So remember, no matter what shitty circumstances you're going through, it is not you. It's not the essence of who you are.
Seems like that would be a relief, though. You know, cutting this ball and chain off your legs, you know.
He says it's true. When you can actually identify your true self, so I guess that's what we're going back to. He says when you can identify your true self and let that surface, there's so much freedom. There's a realization of freedom in that, because what you're actually holding on to takes more energy. You're giving life to
Sure.
a lower vibration, something a little more negative, a little more taxing. So he says, as you give life to it, it is not your true self, therefore it has to constantly be fed. Your true self just is. He goes, you see the difference, Mom? So that's why it's so tiring and exhausting and creates anxiousness and fatigue and even depression to continue to give life to these shitty circumstances. But if we can let it go, that's when you see the uplift occur. And he's like showing like releasing a balloon, the vibration going up. He says, but I'm not going to lie, it takes willingness.
Yeah, sure. You got to face it. So anything else you want to add before we take callers?
He says, he says, I know I come across harsh sometimes. He says,
no,
but I just want, he says, I want all of you to remember that no matter how fucked up something is that you're going through and how much you feel like you don't even know which way is up and you can't even see straight, he says, I promise you, you're never alone in it. So don't try to convince yourself that you are. And that's where he's like tapping on his chest, taking responsibility. I'll be there to help you, he says. So don't ever convince yourself that you're alone, because I promise you, you're not.
That's nice. That's nice to know. All right. Are you guys ready for our first caller?
He says, let's do it. He's doing a drum roll.
All right. Looks like we have one from it looks like an international call. Hi, this is Elisa. Welcome
hello.
to the show. Hi.
Hey,
where are you calling from?
It's from the UK, London. I called I think a month ago or something. 2 months ago, perhaps.
Okay. What's your first name?
Raphael.
Oh, yeah, Raphael. What you got for Erik today?
I had something else, but as a quick question, I would like to ask you about the election going on in the USA. Like, if Trump is about the higher self of Trump, if it's actually a normal entity, or if it's like a pre-planned kind of angel thing because of the influence he's having on people, and because it seems so artificial. For example, what's going on?
I'm scared for both candidates. Okay, I really am. I'm so confused. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Erik, tell.
Me too. And that is a fantastic question. Erik says, and he's real matter of fact about it. That's why I'm laughing, because it's just his approach. Sometimes he's just so funny. But he says, well, the higher self of Trump is, this whole experience for Trump as we know him is to learn how the effect of ego, or he says the existence of, or the presence of ego, can sometimes be manipulative, he says, but also positive. So he says, don't look at him as being like a foreign entity, but rather there's a much higher purpose that he's serving, and it's not even to make people believe in themselves the way that Trump does. That's part of it. Like, Trump just doesn't. It's not even. Erik says that he's not even completely in ego like we see him, but it's just a matter of being connected to himself on a level where if he tells himself something and he has that belief in himself, he knows that he can achieve it. So anyway, getting back to the question, Erik says that he's not like a foreign entity, but it's his higher self that has kind of passed down this life experience for him to be a very powerful man among mankind in this point in time, to be able to not just have an effect also on our nation and on our world, but Erik says it has to, and it will trickle down to the level of each individual being in your own household, that he will move us in ways that other presidents, just because we're looking through that lens, haven't been able to move us before. So there is a lot of value and a lot of purpose in Trump being in the eye right now, as far as the
and also about like Bernie Sanders and the whole election cycle. Is this a whole thing related to some kind of a shift in the general consciousness that we've been hearing about that kind of coincides with the November election?
Erik says, yes, sir. He says...
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah, he says the awareness that Trump has, he says, believe it or not, Trump is actually extremely mindful. He practices mindfulness without even knowing it. So that's why he's able to manifest things quickly in his life. But his contribution to mankind and the movement is what you're going to get from him being in this position, being in, the candidacy and playing this role. So.
Okay, very interesting. Now completely changing topic for the thing I actually called for. I would like to bring forward the higher self of my friend, Francisco. Is that possible?
Okay, what was the first name?
Francisco. It's Francisco.
Okay. So generally, if I bring forward somebody's higher self, what I'll do is just kind of give a main message here. So for Francisco, this is a little bit tricky because generally I don't do that without that person's permission. However, we can still give... He actually
asked for it. Yeah, okay. I'm just like being the messenger.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So, this is a lot. This is deep. So for this person, as this person comes forward, there's a strong sense of apology. There is a strong sense of remorse in the way this person lived their life or something about how they transitioned. So there's a big gap in communication too. So trying to close the communication gap. I don't know if this is for you or for the family though. So unfortunately, we don't have time to get that deep into it. But know that there is the first thing, bringing this person forward. The first thing that needs to be said on their behalf is the apology for the type of transition or the way this person lived their life, because they're attaching the apology to both. So I feel like that's for you, and then also for friends and family of that person. So
there must be some kind of confusion. There must be some kind of confusion here. The friend I'm talking about, how can I say this? The thing I really wanted to ask, maybe I can do this through Erik if it's easier, is if we knew each other before in the spirit world, or if we had some kind of life together before. Maybe it's easier since the gap in communication.
Maybe that is the gap in communication. First of all, don't discard what came through, because there's always value in what they have to say. But I would encourage you to do a little research on the apology. But as far as have you guys lived other lives together?
Any cool, interesting stuff.
Yeah, there's a strong resonance there. When you ask that question, the energy gets stronger. So that's his way of replying, or her, to yes. So the energy amplifies and gets stronger. I feel like it's been many times as siblings. So.
Oh, as siblings. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. And
it does.
Good. And provides.
He's just right now. He's just kind of confused.
We probably need to go on to another.
Sorry. Do you want me to pass on the? Maybe I've been here for too long. No problem. That's cool.
But thanks for calling, Raphael.
Yes, thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
From over the seas, over the pond.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. We have somebody from the 70 area code. Hi. What's your name?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
What is your name and where are you calling from?
I'm from Aurora, Colorado. My name is Caden.
Awesome. Okay, great. What you got for Erik?
All right, so I know Erik will understand. Like, I know he's definitely helped me out with a lot. I've been struggling with bipolar since I was 15. And I'm aware of a lot, and I'm going through a really big change in my life. And, like, part of me, is there to know that this is, like, happening for a reason. It's crazy because everything you guys have been talking about so far. But my question is just, because the part of bipolar, when you can't feel anything, when you're just numb, and you want to know, like, that's the hardest part. You know everything's going to be okay, but you just don't feel anything. Like, is there a way to work on that? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, he says, trust me, man. He says, I can relate to you on this, and I want to help you through this. So beyond this phone call, he says, beyond this phone call, please don't hesitate to ask me for help, and don't hesitate in trusting that I'll be there. He says, I got you, man, but you got to trust that and allow that, he says. So when you are in that numb state, he says, to be brutally honest, this is just a depressed vibration. When your vibration is operating on a lower level, he says it is numb. It's less likely to feel, to be in tune with your surroundings, and you may see it and comprehend mentally what's going on, but it's not connecting here, and he's tapping on his heart. Mm-hmm. So a couple things you have to work on doing, and this one is perhaps the most mysterious. Sometimes it's just natural, sometimes it's pretty mysterious, he says. Shifting your awareness from the head to the heart, he says, because he says you're all in the head right now. Oftentimes with bipolar, that's where we are. We're trying to understand, we're trying to rationalize, overanalyze, and in that we disconnect from our own feelers, he says, our own senses. So you have to shift your awareness back to here. That's the essence of who you are, your heart, and center there, and then that in itself will help to raise your vibration to where you feel emotionally attached to things, or maybe not attached, but involved or interactive with our environment or people. But he says, for you, he says it's not a choosing of being numb. It's just an existence. It's just a feeling. It's just a vibration. That's all. He says. So he says, I'm not even going to use the word meditate with you. He says, it's just that it just seems so foreign to you. So he's encouraging you. You know, what meditation actually is, though, he wants to explain that, is whatever makes you feel most like yourself, because in many ways that's going to turn you on. So let's say, for example, you love to just rock out and, play the guitar. Take time doing that because you're connecting back to you. What resonates with you. Find what resonates with you, what you like to do. If it's hiking, do that. And that is essentially your meditation. And then through that is how your vibration goes up, he says. He says, so what I need you to do is two things. He says, shift your awareness to your heart. Really focus on that. Focus on being here, heart-centered awareness instead of here. Don't worry about, he says, because you often question, like, well, they feel like that, how come I don't feel it like they do? Or, they responded like that, or they experienced it, how come I don't feel anything? And he says, you might know in your head and be able to rationalize, oh, that's a sad situation, but I can't connect emotionally. I don't feel sad about it. He says, so to focus here, shift your awareness to your heart, and then also find your meditation. Find what makes you you, and spend a lot of time there. Because he says right now you're spending a lot of time up here, and he's tapping on his temple.
Yeah.
So What makes you feel like you?
Look, that's been my biggest struggle lately. I am so aware of what's going on, and like if it wasn't for Erik, I really don't. That's the thing. I have to try to understand it because I can't feel it, and I feel like it's just constantly. I'm aware that I'm depressed. I'm aware that these thoughts are bad, but they're always just there, and I can't focus on what I like, what makes me happy. I don't know.
Well, Erik, what do you think would make him happy? Maybe Erik has some ideas.
He says there's a few more things he wants to say here. He says to remind you of our what we were talking about just a bit earlier in the show, and you already know what makes you feel not good, or you already know, and you're a master at not feeling or feeling numb or just not feeling connected. So now focus and just shift your awareness in your heart to feeling. So he says, and again, in order to do that, ground yourself in you through meditation. So for you, he says that you will experiment with, try, and get to liking journaling, like just writing shit down. He says, just write shit down.
Yeah.
He says, I don't care if you do or don't feel it, just write it down, and don't try to understand it as much. Allow to feel it. And also get outdoors. Get outdoors, he says. And he says one last statement. He says, something I wish I could have really fully grasped in my physical life was that truthfully, and he says, don't take offense to this, anybody, but truthfully, you can't place any trust or faith in man. It can only be here or here. And he's pointing to self and God. So he says, what he's saying is people are going to let you down. And it has nothing to do with you and with who you are. So find that heart-centered awareness. Just practice it. Work on it. What does that mean to you? He says, I can't define that for you because it's different for everybody. But I can tell you that journaling is going to help and getting outside is going to help. He says you need space. He says it might seem conflicting because oftentimes people with bipolar issues will introvert, but you need space from people to get clarity of heart, not clarity of thought. But you know what he said? He just stopped right in the middle of everything and said, believe it or not, what we're talking about is the essence of being a very deep empath, like to a whole
I definitely am.
Yeah, to a whole new level to where it's almost like we're blinded to it because it is so deep and it's so prevalent. So that's why he's encouraging you to get out and get space from other people. Other people are going to be toxic to you just learning you. He says that's what this is about, is you learning you and connecting here, tapping on the heart. So hopefully...
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, hopefully this helps you, and just those two things.
And he's got your back. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can always call.
Okay, can I ask just one small question about the bipolar that I've been struggling with?
Okay.
It's just like, I can have like 28 days a month that's just emptiness and, oh my gosh, horrible. But they're like the 2 days that I get out of the month, I feel so alive. And like I was told by my guides that like in that time, like I'm channeling like my higher self to where I can't even like feel like, I can't even imagine being depressed. I mean, is that the bipolar? Like the energies of it, or?
Erik says sort of. He says it's just a shift in like your consciousness. It's a shift in your awareness that manifests physically as bipolar, and that's the label we've given it, he says. But that back and forth is that shift in your awareness that has you feeling completely opposite from one time to the next. So.
Thank you so much, all of you. I really appreciate everything. You guys are great.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, sweetie.
All right. Bye.
All right. I need to make sure everybody knows that we are here because of liveparanormal.com, so please check out their awesome shows. Meanwhile, let's go to somebody from the 401 area code. Hi, what's your first name?
Is that me? Hello?
That's you. What's your name?
Oh, Nicole.
And where are you calling from?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. What would you like to ask Erik?
I kind of feel like some of it was answered with the last call. Can he just confirm that kind of has to do with me too? I mean, I don't think I have bipolar, but a lot of it resonated. So I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, he says, to be honest with you, nowadays, he says this is a lot of what is happening. He says empaths are being labeled as bipolar. It's the physical manifestation of something spiritual, and the reason for that is because some people aren't aware of the idea or what it means to be empathic, and so sometimes that awareness is absent, and then even if you have that awareness, knowing how to handle it is absent. So for you, he's saying the same for you, that you're just very sensitive, you're very deeply connected empathically. Sometimes that can actually have the opposite effect, he says, and make you feel disconnected from people, from feelings and situations, and make you feel isolated.
Why is that? Is that because you're protecting yourself?
He says he's giving the word introversion. He says people introvert, and most of the time, Mom, it's subconscious. He says they pull in because they're so sensitive. It's like it's a natural defense mechanism, he says, that people aren't even aware sometimes that they're doing.
Yeah.
And then he says, and then sometimes you see people that are aware of it. They're being sensitive, and then they go off the other end, and then they just say, "Fuck it" to everything. I don't care. Nothing's going to affect me. He says, and then unfortunately, that's stepping closer to the ego. But Nicole, for you, he says that to work on. He's actually encouraging you. He's giving you a lot of color, a lot of red, and blue. So he's encouraging you to work on just giving light, giving balance to the energy centers in your body, the chakras as we know them, because that, I feel like, is going to help you feel steady. He doesn't like to use the word balance. Sometimes that's the best word he can give to describe what he's trying to say, but he says that oftentimes balance is just an illusion.
Well, should she sleep in red or blue sheets, or wear that color clothing, or what do you mean when you talk about the colors, Erik?
Yeah, he says burn a red candle, wear something red, eat red fruits and vegetables, and drink red juice. Put a red light bulb in your room. Whatever you can do to get around these colors isn't just to see them, but to experience its vibration. It's the color itself is a vibration that the body needs in order to sort of keep your feelers in check, he says. So, because then
you mentioned blue. You mentioned blue. Should she include blue in that mix?
He says, really, Mom, she should include all of them. He says that she just needs a restoration of light. So, because he's starting to show green and yellow. So it doesn't mean that you're that the color's absent, just maybe a little insufficient. And the whole reason why he's suggesting this is to bring your vibration to a point to where the sensitivity that you experience is tolerable, he says, so that you don't experience these fluctuations up and down emotionally.
Well, if only there were rainbow light bulbs.
Yeah, no
I'm
doubt.
sure
That got really wordy,
Rainbow
Nicole.
sheep.
So hopefully you followed.
Yeah, no,
I hope that helps, Nicole.
That makes a lot of sense. And I just wanted to know, like, since I am an empath and I'm so sensitive, is that why, like, I get to the point sometimes where I'm just like, I mean, I label myself as, like, lazy, but I feel like that's
Neglectful.
because neglectful, like, to myself.
Well, that's just the word that Erik gives. He says instead of lazy, sometimes it can be neglectful, but it's because of that awareness of the feelings or emotions that it might elicit, whatever it is. So he says this is just a very common behavior in people that are deep empaths. They can be neglectful to certain sides of themselves, other people, and situations. Procrastinators too. He's throwing that word out there. They'll procrastinate things.
Yeah,
I think I have kids. So I think I have some kids that must be empaths then. Well, thank you, Nicole, for calling in. Eric's got your back.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes. Take care, Nicole.
You too.
Bye, Nicole.
Bye.
Okay, we have somebody from the 413 area code. Let's see who we have. Hi, person from 413.
Hello.
Hey, what's your first name?
Marie.
Hi, Marie.
Hi. I'm calling from Massachusetts.
Oh, awesome. Beautiful state.
I have a ton of things I could talk about, but right now I've got some pressing issues with my daughter that I want to mention. Some of it's about her mental health stuff, but before we get into that, there's an issue with her father being investigated for possibly embezzling from the woman that he's in charge of her care, and my daughter's been working for him. So I'm worried that it's going to trickle down to her and potentially down to me because I'm managing her mental health programs and financials and things like that.
Okay. Erik says he makes me feel like not to worry about that because it's not going to trickle down that far. And then he also says be careful what you give energy to because you can manifest it. I'm sure you've probably heard him talk about this many times. And worrying, of course we all do it because we're human, but that's giving energy to help create something that we don't want. He says, and you know what you don't want, so this is where he's saying surrender. Lay it down and let it go and walk away from it, that which you worry about. So he does make me feel like when I ask him, I said, well, will it trickle down to her daughter and then on to her? And he says no.
Oh, thank God. Thank you, Lord.
What else do you want to ask?
Well, she was labeled bipolar ADHD. She's had everything since she was a young child. I can look back now to her infancy where she was very demanding. By the time she was 2 and 3, she was violent. First of all, what are her diagnoses, or is it because she's, an indigo? Is there anything that I can do to support her, or does she just have to live her own life? I guess I also have, of course, because I'm a mom, I have my own feelings of inadequacy as a parent, even though I tried to do the best that I could.
Yeah, sure. He's getting pretty deep on this explanation. He calls your daughter walking awareness. He says she's walking awareness, and so he says all of us, we're all indigo, we're all empaths, we're all of those things. It's not that we have it, and even like ADHD, we all have that capacity, but what happens is, he says, is when these things manifest in a strong way is because we are walking in our truth in such a way that it seems like the true essence of who we are is forward or at its foremost point, he says, and it's literally the image he's showing me is like waking up from zombie mode and not knowing how to deal with that because the norm is like zombie mode or autopilot. So when we begin to be attuned to our true authentic self, which is a deep feeler, that's the true essence of how we exist, is by feeling, that's when you see all this shit arise, he says, and then all of these labels are thrown on you and stamped on you, like ADHD and bipolar or whatever it may be, because it's just an inability to structure or organize what we're feeling, almost to the effect of saying, like, discipline our own experience and what we're feeling. So all these, he says, these people that have, like, the ADHD, they're just people that are deeply in tune with how they feel, and that's why they're overstimulated so quickly and so easily, he says. It's like, you know, the wind blows left and then the wind blows right, and it catches your attention, and it's like, hey, you know, and you can't stay focused, but that's because you're so in tune with what you feel or your environment.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and he says, so know
I was
that
just going to say, where's the anger coming from, but you can also finish.
Yeah, he's just saying that, like, she's so, sometimes he says you can be so aware but also be unaware that you're, like, walking in your own truth. So that's why I have these experiences, and it seems difficult. It seems like a struggle because we're not sure how to handle it, but it's us walking in an awakened state. So for her, he says that if she just needs to be given like tactics on how to recognize it or identify it when it's happening, and just be able to shift in her thoughts or shift her consciousness. He likes to call it thoughts in this situation, not consciousness, but he says to shift her thoughts to be able to kind of grab control over the situation so that her emotions and what she's feeling don't control what she's experiencing so much. Because he makes me feel like she's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. That's too funny. Is there anything that I can do?
It sounds like you two need a session together, you know, maybe even...
Well, actually, I'm calling on Monday, but I wanted to talk about other things, but on Monday.
He says the first thing that you can do is relieve yourself of feeling and taking responsibility. He says that this is her life plan and her mission, and you can't hold yourself responsible one way or another in blame, like blaming yourself for her experience or the lack of the experience that you want.
That's what we mothers do, though. That's what we mothers do, huh?
Yeah, so
but
true.
I do tell her I love her every day, even when she's mad at me.
Oh, you're a great mom. You're a great mom, and thank you so much for calling. And I'm going to try to take one more short call before we close. But
okay, thank you, Erik.
I think it would be wonderful for you to have more time, more Erik time, to help you out.
Yes, I love it. All right, thank you.
All right,
thank
you. You're welcome.
All right, let's see if we can have a very short one. I hope this is a very short one. We only have like a couple of minutes left from the 503 area code. Do you have something short?
Hello?
Hello? Hi, do you have something really short? Because we're ending in a couple of minutes.
Uh-oh.
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have a very we have to close in a couple of minutes. So do you have something very short you want to ask Erik?
Yes, I would love to ask a couple. Well, they're really short, both of them. I'd like to ask what he thinks about numerology. Is there any, is there any truth to that?
Yes. Very quickly, he gave these two words: truth and reality. So numerology is directly connected to our reality. He says, just remember that. Remember and let that sink in.
Okay,
awesome.
I'll let that sink in. And real quick, I want to know how I can serve this life that I'm in right now. What does my higher self, if you will, say?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, by allowing change, accepting change.
Allowing change.
Yeah, allowing
Okay.
change in every form that it's going to present itself to you. It seems like you're already pretty good at this, but this is the true meaning as to why you have this incarnation. That's the purpose of this incarnation, is to experience as much change as possible and to allow it, but also observe yourself through the process of change, any kind of change.
And lastly, just as it relates to career, because I'm in the middle of, just got laid off, if you will, and I'm in the midst of searching. That's why I asked about how can I serve this world.
Interesting. This goes, Erik's going to take this question, and this goes back to allowing change. So the fact that your heart is open enough, he says that in itself is service. So you have to start at the very root of your own question. He says the fact that you are willing to serve in itself is service. He says, listen to what I mean by that. And again, just in this downtime, he calls it, understand and allow this change. So he says, just be present in the moment. He says, you're going very forward and thinking too much ahead, so be present in the moment.
Well, that sounds like good advice. Thank you for calling.
Yes, thanks for calling.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank everybody for being a part of our family, being a part of our show. I would like to tell you that you can get in touch with Kim at kimbabcock.net. It's N-E-T, not C-O-M. Kim, is there anything else you'd like to share before we close?
I just want to thank all of you guys once again for listening. And Erik is blowing kisses, and he says, remember, guys, he says, perhaps the biggest message behind everything that we ever share is if you think it can help somebody, share it. If it's a message, if it's a post, if it's a blog entry or a YouTube video, if it's one of these radio shows, he says share it. If you think it's going to help someone, don't hold it back. Don't hesitate. He says just share it. And then he's turning that into a song. So, you know.
Oh, no. He was a terrible singer. Please don't, Erik, don't. But anyway, hopefully you guys can join us on one of the cities on our 8-city tour. It's going to be starting pretty soon, at the end of June. So you guys check out the blog and check out channelingericmediums.com for the schedule of that tour. And thank you, Kim, for all you do. Bye, everybody.
My pleasure. All of you guys have a fantastic night. Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling in. And we will talk to you next week.
Adios.
Good night.